Okay, everybody. Welcome to Pod versus Cast, where we talk about versus battles, power levels, and all things related. I'm here. I'm Mr. Tangelo. That's me. And I'm here with Sky Dragon
Hello.
and Phantom.
These losers kept me here for an hour trying to set up their goddamn mics. Let me out. Just let me out of here.
Sky eventually figured it out. He had no help whatsoever, and we didn't tell him what to do. He's a smart boy.
Yeah, I'm a smart person.
Yeah, Sky is technologically illiterate. Someone send him help. Send him a
No,
book.
I don't need any help. I figured it out.
Send him technology for dummies or some shit. Because he's a dummy.
I'm not a dummy. You're a dummy.
You're the dummy.
Anyways.
Sky versus Phantom, who would win? That's our
Sky
topic
versus-
today.
That's our topic for tonight. I probably have,
our
I probably
topic
have the better
for-
running feats.
Oh, oof. But our topic for today is things that are and are not good in versus battle debates, aka Dragon Ball. We're gonna talk
AKA
about
Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball is terrible for versus debates because it's the most inconsistent piece of garbage that's ever existed.
For the most part, I would say.
It's incredibly inconsistent.
There's a scene, but all right, you remember back in Dragon Ball when Roshi did the full power Kamehameha for the first time, and he capsized a bunch of boats. He made a big tsunami. It was awesome.
Yes.
And then in Dragon Ball Super, there's a scene where he gets like a power up, right? And he's in his full power form, and he shoots a Kamehameha at Goku, and he deflects it, and it doesn't, and it hits like a rock, and it like fucking, it pathetically like scuffs it. It's like, like there's like a little dust, there's like a tiny little fart cloud, and that's it. It doesn't do anything.
Well, I think Super is just really bad with that in general. Because, like, a lot of things that happen in Super, and, like, I don't know if it was, like, a stage thing that was ever explained, but I know from everything that I've watched, like, there'd be moments where, like, whatever the name of the fusion, Patara fusion is it Kefla? Khalifa?
Yeah, Kefla.
Yeah. She does this, like, super powerful charge blast that everyone's, like, raving about how powerful it is. And she like, feels like she could destroy a universe with it. And like even though that could be a higher level, obviously, it still should at least be like a decent level. And then she like throws it, and then it just kind of goes through 3 rocks and then just fades off into the distance. It did nothing.
It's supposed to be all right. So like she shoots it. Like the excuse they use is that it's the strongest like material in the universe or whatever. But she shoots it right, and like it would hit the ground at that angle. But then earlier in another episode, or maybe it was later, there was one of them Pride Troopers that sit on the edge, and literally the ground just like breaks under him. It was fucking pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, there's just lots of stuff like that too.
Like Jiren, just Jiren.
Jiren's just a whole mess of, especially like how his character is just like, it's very unclear like how much strength he's using at times. And
lads, Jiren is just Superman if he was an alien.
Guys, who would win, Superman or Goku?
We're not
How about here's my answer, delete this.
Yeah, I don't think we should be doing that here. But I mean, we all know the inconsistency between Super and just Super in general. But do you like what inconsistencies are there in Dragon Ball Z itself? Because that's what, a lot of people realize the Super faults. But a lot of people are still pretty adamant on the Dragon Ball Z ones.
Well, with Dragon Ball Z, I don't think it's so much more of an inconsistency as it is just like a vagueness. Like they're just like I mean, there's the obvious thing where like they could blow up planets in like the Namek saga, but they aren't like easily doing it by accident in like the Buu saga. Yeah, and like people write it off as like they can condense their power in like certain areas, but I don't remember where they explained it ever.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think one of the problems that Dragon Ball Z has in general with its feats is that, like, I know by, like, a lot of things they end up doing, like, by power scaling, they gotta get stronger, right? They can't just only be blowing up planets. But, like, I think the problem is they never do anything more than that. Like, even Kid Buu, when he was, like, blowing up all the planets on his, like, when he was teleporting around, like, the blast almost killed him. Like, sure, he regenerated, of course, but, like, so apparently plant level is still like the thing that they're working with. It's just
Well,
really odd.
I think with Boo, he has like less durability so much as he has like regen.
I mean, yeah.
Why did it take
But
them
still.
so long to break out of Boo?
Who?
Remember when they were eaten by Boo, basically?
Yeah.
Why did it take them so long? Why didn't they just blast out?
I don't even remember how they got out.
They just flew out. I think they flew around his body and like rescued all their friends, and then they flew out of like the holes that like he shot steam out of.
Mm.
At least that's how I remember it.
I thought he like sneezed them out.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Who knows? There was probably a fucking Toei filler.
Probably. Excuse me. Oh, another thing with the Dragon Ball. What manga was it? Let me see if I can remember. It was during It was during the Buu saga, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was. No.
Well, what was it again?
It was during the Buu saga. I think. I mean, this is not the moment I'm talking about. But one moment that always strikes me as odd, especially when I rewatch it, is when Goku turns Super Saiyan 3. Everybody's worried about his transformation destroying the planet. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, like, I was never very, like, it's never very clear on how, like, what exactly it is they do when they transform. Like, I'm assuming it's like that, they gather power from within, and, like, it like, releases outwards. I'm not really sure.
Well,
Cause
yeah, that's essentially what they're doing.
But then why does that, like... So, if that's the case, then wouldn't, like, any stronger character transforming cause that same shaking?
Well, not every character necessarily transforms in the same way. Like with Frieza, it's like it's almost like he mutates or something.
Yeah.
But like with Saiyans, it's like a Super Saiyan form. They have to like bring out a power within themselves.
Also, keep in mind, Super Saiyan 3 is canonically super inefficient.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's only super inefficient in the sense that like it drains his power.
Well,
but then he, like,
it could also
later
be that it drains its power, but also like that it could be that it just goes outward. Like it radiates off of him way too much, and that's why it's inefficient. Like Super, and I think they said that with.
It was in Battle of Gods.
In Battle.
Yeah, in Battle of Gods, Beerus talks about that.
Okay. Well, what I do know at some point. Well, no, what I was going to say was, there is somewhere where like someone is talking to Vegeta, and they're like, "I didn't feel you at all." I think. Okay, no, never mind. This was in Fighters, so it's not really canon, but like I do remember. For what it's worth, I do remember them saying, like, I can't feel your power at all. It feels like you didn't get that much stronger, but clearly you have. And it's like, yeah, no, it's just, this form is way more efficient.
That's because that's his blue form, right?
Yeah, that was his blue form.
It's like something to do with like how blue is better for ki control.
Yeah, that's
like
that's what I'm trying to say. My point was the reason why when he turned Super Saiyan 3, the Earth was shaking could probably be just because like it's terrible ki control. Everything was just radiating out. It's just a lot of ki.
Yeah, but later when Goku turns Super Saiyan 3, it doesn't cause any shaking.
Well, that's because Dragon Ball is super inconsistent.
It also might just be because he got better at it. He mastered it. Because I mean, he had to master the first Super Saiyan form as well.
I prefer the version where Toriyama's a hack. Because
well, I mean, regardless, Toriyama's a hack.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say Toriyama is definitely a hack.
Don't talk about Toriyama Sensei that way, you fucking
You're
nerds.
the first one who said it.
I said no such thing.
Help.
Help.
Why did I decide to do a podcast with these nerds?
I think I think it's Dragon Ball Z in general, or Dragon Ball in general, just suffers from like not really knowing the scale at which it's playing at. Like not understanding the scale it's playing at. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of writers suffer from this problem for good reason, because it doesn't really matter in terms of storytelling. But like, you can obviously tell that Akira has no idea like how fucking big the moon is, or like
what the moon does.
Yeah, or what the moon does.
Can you imagine how fucked we would be if the moon just went away tomorrow?
Yeah.
We would be super fucked.
Yeah, but like Piccolo can blow it up with like a key blast, like just that he just kind of brings up whatever, no big deal. But then like he can't even like destroy a planet before before what, Namek Saga? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very silly.
As Piccolo gets stronger, he also gets weaker.
Yeah, but that's like, I think obviously like writers shouldn't like you don't expect writers to know certain stuff like that. But like actually in the moon example though, I actually probably would expect people to know like what the moon does. Like it's an important information for your story, especially when you have characters that can threaten to blow it up.
Well, I mean, it's just like a insignificant plot thing that like I don't think it doesn't bother me at all.
I wouldn't necessarily say it bothers me, but I do think it's like knowing certain things. Like, I don't expect every writer to know like how much force or energy you need to exert to like dent steel or something. That's like more like diving into like like the exact amounts. That's like more like, but like the moon helping our tides is pretty common knowledge, I would say.
Sure. But, like, I mean, I'm sure Toriyama probably knew it and then just decided, I don't care,
I mean, maybe that could be very true. Well, I hope it's not.
Anyone got any examples of, like, someone who's good in a debate? Someone who has, like, really great feats?
A good series? Or just a good character?
Either.
Anything with clearly defined rules. In my opinion, something like... Say it's strong or weak as much as you want, but something like Full Metal Alchemist, where the rules are fairly clearly defined, is a very good
consistent.
Series. Yeah.
Yes, Full Metal Alchemist is a good one for that. The one I was gonna say was One Piece is actually quite consistent with how not only how its characters evolve, but what its characters can and cannot do. For the most part, there is some like weird oddities in places, but for the most part, they are really consistent with. Especially when it comes to the characters themselves' power levels. Like, you don't see... In, like, One Piece, you don't see, like...
They're called bounties in One Piece. God.
Whatever.
God.
Like
bounties don't really... bounties aren't for measuring their power.
Yes, they are!
They're for measuring their threat to the world government.
Yeah. Well, some characters are more... Some characters are more threatening than others, even if they're weaker. No. None of you even cool. Okay. But what I was gonna say is like, especially with the characters and how they interact with each other, and I think this is important because it lets you, because even though like how they interact with each other in their own series doesn't really affect what they do outside of their series, but the reason it's important is because since how they interact with all the characters in their own show. It makes their feats that they actually do pull off more reliable, like because we know that they're not like constantly shifting in gear,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's cool about One Piece feats is that they have like a lot of really like concrete and definable feats too. Like they're always lifting stuff that's like easily calculable or whatever. Like I remember in Thriller Bark, Frankie swung around some like pillars with like that he chained together and used as nunchucks.
I remember that.
Yeah, or like Luffy lifted that gold ball. They're all really calculatable. Feats.
Calculatable, yeah. Hey, I would think
that's
that's a word.
If it's not a word, I invented it. Just
yeah,
truly,
I agree. I do think there's some oddities though, especially with like. I think Kizaru is definitely a weird one, because well,
with Kizaru, I think it's kind of up in the air whether he's actually moving at light speed constantly or not.
Yeah, I would say no, because I would feel like the point of Yato no Kagami would there be no point in that move if he wasn't just always moving at light speed.
I could see that like his kick specifically, like he himself is moving his leg at light speed to kick. Or like something like that. Like whenever he turns his leg, or like something of himself into light to do an attack.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree. Well, not light speed itself. I would like what I think it probably is that what it should be at least is that you move at light speed, and then before contact you take off the light speed because nothing moving at the speed of light can have mass. I know it's kind of like an anime thing, who cares? But
Yeah.
it is nice when they do follow that rule, just so it makes things more easy to understand. And like you said, it makes things easier to calc when they do when it's clear that they're following that rule.
Right.
Because once you start trying to calc like if something's moving at like 10% faster than the speed of light, it's kind of weird to calc like how much damage it's going to do on impact with something. It's just a little bit odd when we have no real life things to go by.
Yeah. I think One Piece has like unintentionally avoided like power creep or in the same way that like in the same way Dragon Ball had it because like none of the characters really have any like super flashy like explodey beam techniques.
No.
Aside from the radical beam, which isn't really like a power thing that you can increase. It just kind of has a set power because it's like a robotic thing.
Yeah.
It's like a tech thing.
Another thing that helps. Oh, you can continue going.
Oh, I mean that's about it. I mean it doesn't get into like because with Naruto, there's this constant scaling of like his Rasengan can destroy this and now it can destroy like a bigger thing than that and it just keeps going. And I think like with One Piece they've kind of avoided that trapping.
There's a chance they may get there with hockey though.
So I was gonna bring that up. So what I think is important about this, and Hunter x Hunter is also good at doing this with how the Nen system works. The Nen system is a little bit more liable to the problem that Dragon Ball Z and Naruto run into, but you can still avoid it as long as it's thought about properly. But to me, the problem with Dragon Ball Z and Naruto and Fairy Tail and all these things where characters share a universal
and Bleach,
yes, is that the problem comes.
What are you talking about? Bleach was great all the way up to the end at the end of the Save Rukia arc.
No, but the Save Rukia arc. Yeah, thanks.
I mean that's helpful. I mean that's when the series ended, right? When that arc ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
We all hope that's when it ended.
When Aizen rode off into the sunset as the hero he was, he did nothing wrong.
Yes,
yeah,
that's when the series ended. Aizen did nothing wrong.
But so what I was gonna say is that generally a lot of this in Naruto, your chakra level is basically equivalent to your power level, right? Like how much chakra jutsu output you can do is how much damage you're gonna do. And Bleach was the same thing with Reiatsu. Is that how we say it? The Reiatsu. I don't know.
Spiritual pressure.
The spiritual pressure.
That's how they say it in English.
It was like the same thing with that too, right? The higher your spiritual pressure, the stronger you were, and that was just like flat out it. So like if I had like a spiritual pressure of like 105, and you had a spiritual pressure of like I don't know 102, right? If we both sent a blast of our full power, I win no matter what. My base thing is just higher than you, right? So I just win. Assuming that we're just firing, just two straight beams at each other. And I think the reason this is bad for power creep and consistency is that like once every character gets to a ridiculous level, it becomes really confusing on like, are each of their beams this strong, or is only their big beams this strong? Like what's really going on here? And like a problem too is that they're these become so integral to the fights that you basically don't win without having it,
Yeah.
And the way I think that One Piece avoids it is because now it could still happen with hockey, but the thing is I noticed about hockey especially, I'm not caught up with One Piece of course, but when I've seen Fishman and I've seen Punk Hazard and I've seen Dressrosa, and I feel like hockey was just really put there as a way to fight Logias, basically.
I mean, yeah, that's because I mean, like, if they had to come up with like a reason to, or like some kind of weakness that like every single arc that they had a Logia, it'd be a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Like imagine the arc where he finally fights the admirals. Literally, two of them are Logias. It'd be a fucking nightmare.
Yeah. Like especially like because like the first two Logias that you appear are Crocodile and Enel. And obviously, Sand has a very easily findable weakness, and Luffy literally is Enel's weakness.
I wouldn't say Sand has an easily findable weakness. More so that it was like he was in a location where he would have found it because like
Yeah.
water is like a cherished thing in the desert.
And
Which is ironic because he specifically went to the desert to get away from like his weakness.
well, yeah, but the thing is too is that, but like, I mean, like, water is easy to apply to yourself. You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
but like, when you're going up against ice, for example, like Aokiji, you're not gonna set yourself on fire to try to punch him. It's not a very good idea. So I think the moment that Aokiji got shown, I know Hockey was probably there from the beginning because the whole Shanks thing. Obviously, that's a theory. But like, regardless if it was there at the beginning or not, Oda must have known when Aokiji, Kizaru, and Akainu were introduced that their Logia, he had to come up with a weakness for Logias. There had to
like
be
a consistent one.
Yeah, there had to be something that Luffy could learn where he could fight all of them without having to come up with some like stupid, especially for Akainu. Like, what the hell is Luffy gonna do against Akainu? Like, what could he apply to his body that isn't Haki to damage Akainu?
Ice, maybe.
Maybe. But so that's
Or I'm thinking more like he's up. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm getting a bit off topic though. But that's the thing that helps Haki not have the problem that Ki and Chakra has in terms of like consistency, because Haki is really just there to be a way to hit. And then what's good about it too is that once it's especially this is a problem that Chakra definitely has, because DBZ not so much because it doesn't really do anything else with its ki. But with especially with the Devil Fruits, what makes the Devil Fruits really nice is like Luffy's. He's rubber. We can expect all the things he can do to be in the confines of what rubber can do, right? Luffy, to this day, has not pulled out anything that rubber can't do, right?
Sure. Maybe some maybe like maybe not in the laws of physics, maybe, but in the laws of rubber.
Yeah, like how rubber works. Like, you don't see him like, you don't see. I mean, I guess the Fire Fist thing was a little bit weird, but
they still haven't explained Red Hawk.
No,
that's really makes me mad.
It is a weird one, but like like Gear Third is just pumping, inflating his bones like a balloon, right? Just pump like like how tires work or whatever. Or Gear Second is just using the using the like
using
like,
rubber to make the blood go faster through.
Yeah, he's using his
like the elasticity of his body.
So like everything is in the confines of what rubber is capable of doing. So you don't see him pulling out just like you don't see Luffy suddenly using electric attacks.
Yeah.
Which in this case that also makes things easier to calc because we know the properties of this stuff. Sure, they stretch the limits a little bit, but we do know the properties of this stuff.
I didn't know fire. I didn't know rubber can start fire with Haki and Red Hawk.
Well,
that's one of the weird ones.
The theory behind like Red Hawk is that like he's like moving his fist really hard, like really fast, and like generating friction. I don't know if I buy it though.
Wasn't he underwater when he did it?
Yeah. What I've heard as another thing is just like it's like the soul of Ace or some bullshit like that.
I mean, has it popped up since? Oh no, he used it against Doffy.
He uses it. It's a consistent thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of buy the friction thing, but the first time he uses it, he's underwater, so I don't know how fire getting started.
I always thought it was just what his Haki could do.
No, Haki can't do that.
Then
I mean, they've established in One Piece that like that there are martial arts that literally just let you do whatever kind of bullshit. I can believe Red Hawk, I guess, because I mean like they're like with the Rokushiki stuff, they let you fucking like glide or fly through the air, move super fast, and like shoot shockwaves out of your fists.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know. I guess I can believe that there's a martial art that lets you light your hand on fire, and Luffy just accidentally did it.
I suppose. But yeah, so my main point was that like, that makes stuff easier to calc when we have like a real world basis for all the stuff that they're doing. And another thing that helps it too is because again, Haki could ruin this, but because of how everyone's powers basically worked, it's very easy to define like a level of like at least a base level, right? Rubber might not be as useful as magma in terms of like hurting somebody, right? So it's easy to see like why that would be higher up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, but in Dragon Ball Z or Naruto, everything is just filled under this one category. So you never know what characters are going to do one moment to the next, right?
Power levels suck. We get it.
Power levels
Rip.
are fun. It's just,
Power. We should do an episode on the futility of power levels.
the futility of power levels. DBZ would be another great example.
DBZ is the example.
That was enough of my One Piece tirade. But that's what makes One Piece more consistent. And again, throughout the feats, each feat builds on the last one, and never goes down. Because I think a big problem is that when feats go down, because that's when things get really messy. Like I know we just call them outliers, but
I got another thing about One Piece. And one thing that does suck about using One Piece in a debate is that like they don't, but like because of the fact that they don't use like flashy beam attacks and like explosions, they are not confined by the busting tier system. So like Luffy could probably reasonably hurt like someone with mountain level durability, but he probably couldn't destroy a mountain because he doesn't have like the area of effect to do so.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing. Not that necessarily think that means it's bad though, because it's just it makes things better.
it's bad because every time it comes up, you have to like fucking explain it.
Yeah, that's
true. Luffy's never busted a mountain.
Well, that's just a problem with the community. You hear that? You're all fucking dumb.
Let's not attack people. Anyways.
Oh, I'm gonna attack everybody.
So
I
feel like we should.
We're gonna attack all the stupid people.
Comic Vine is a gay.
Speaking of comics, something else that's terrible.
Yeah. Speaking of comics,
I don't know. Okay, I don't necessarily think that comics are terrible with their feats. What they're terrible with is consistency.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, well, they literally, it is impossible for it to be consistent because, like, when you have a character, right, and there will be every arc, a writer will switch out and like lead the thing, but like it's not like all the writers at DC and all the writers at Marvel have a consensus on like how powerful Superman is or whatever.
Yeah.
So like every time a new writer comes in, his fucking like all the power scaling for the entire universe within the context of that story is gonna shift because that writer has a different idea of like how the powers work in that universe.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Green Lantern Rebirth, five Green Lanterns will fuck Superman shit up. But then like, in a Superman comic, Superman will fucking like 1v1 the entire Green Lantern Corps and just win. Which isn't 1v1, but shut up. I'm off the cuff here.
Yeah, but what I will say about comics is that I can't speak for all of them, but I do think a lot of comics do end up having really defined feats. Hello? Like they generally, I think with certain writers, they generally.
I think.
Can you guys hear me?
Internet is poopy.
I can hear you.
Okay, so for general.
I think Phantom's on the phone.
Oh.
In the middle of the podcast.
No, my internet was shitting itself. Everything's fine now.
Okay.
Another thing to bring up. I don't know if you guys brought it up, but think about how many different fucking universes there are in comics. Which one do you use?
Yeah,
well,
that definitely
I think there's usually like a standard main universe that people just like if you say Superman, you obviously mean like the main line, like standard Superman.
Well, okay, you could say that for Superman, but then like, do you mean New 52 Superman? Do you mean before New 52? And then let's not even get into Marvel, which has been rebooted like 6 fucking times.
Well, for that you have to specify. So you have to say like New 52 Superman versus whatever.
That's where the problem comes in when people don't specify, and it happens a lot.
Yeah, and you have to ask, and just like, well, what Superman is it?
Oh, and then there's the one from the films, and then which films? It's a mess. It's a mess, and people aren't going to specify.
Well,
unless they're a part of the community. They're a part of the community.
Sure.
The one thing that people tend to do though is they tend to jumble up the feats from different things.
Right. Like I remember specifically there's a Thor feat, and people try to reinforce that Thor is slow, which he is. Thor is in fact a slow boy, and he could not even like keep up with Goku or Superman. But like there's this one scan that I saw to like prove it that was going around, and it was of Thor like not even being able to keep up with Spider-Man, but that Thor wasn't Odin's son, it was someone like standing in for him. I don't remember his name though.
Yeah, and people will try to use certain evidence like that. Oh, and quick on the Dragon Ball Z topic, Dragon Ball Z is also hella inconsistent with its durability feats, but that's not the point. Just wanted to bring that up.
Remember that time Goku got hurt by a bullet?
Oh boy. But we'll just write that off for bad writing, which it is.
Well, for Thor's speed, I'm not super... I want to get more into some Thor stuff, but I'm not super into it.
With Thor.
How... Alright. Wouldn't his speed... Because I know how he flies. Is like he sort of flings his hammer and he lets the momentum of that carry him. Wouldn't his speed depend on how fast his hammer... or how heavy his hammer is and how strong he is and how...
Well, the thing about Thor's speed... There's two kinds of speed, right? There's travel speed and combat speed. So Thor, like with the way he travels, he can travel like incredibly fast, but only in like a straight line or whatever, like in like long distances. Yeah. But in combat, he can't dash around in combat as fast as he can like travel long distances.
See, I see when he said speed, I thought you meant like travel speed, because I'm fucking tired, because you guys spent a fucking hour trying to fix your fucking mics.
Phantom is a cranky boy tonight.
I'm tired.
Welcome to the cranky cast.
Cranky cast.
I am the cranky old man of this podcast. I am your entertainment because these fools are fucking boring. Be entertained.
I hope that you get kicked off this cast. Anyways,
if I get kicked off this cast, it'll be the worst thing to ever happen.
More like the best.
Voted off the island. Anyways, so now another one thing, and this is where things get really muddled up, I think, is with video games. And now obviously, depending on the video game, a lot of video games, especially Nintendo games, generally just have like the games are all like basically one-off stories of each other. And they don't really have anything to do with each other. And, people try to make them have stuff to do with each other, but they don't normally. But what makes it really weird with video games is, do you do in-game feats? Do you do cutscene feats? Do you do story feats? How do you do this? Because, like, a lot of times, especially when you're trying to debate with video game characters, people, like, for Kirby, for example. Like, there'll be one point in a Kirby game where you fall on a spike and Kirby gets hurt, right? Right.
And then there'll be another point, like usually at the beginning of the game, you're going to get hurt by like random spikes or like random fireballs, right? Yeah. And then usually by the end of Kirby games, in one Kirby game, I think it's Return of Dreamland, Kirby gets like a black hole thrown at him, and he just tanks it to the face. And
dude, those were adamantium spikes. That's how I got hurt.
Yeah.
Idiot.
But like, so that makes video games really hard to come consistently.
They were bone hurting. They were bone hurting spikes.
Well,
bone hurting spikes.
Guys.
But Kirby has no.
No, guys. If you want video games to come consistently, like what Sky said, you just need to get them a little blue pill.
Or what? The way I see it, it's like a case by case thing. Like, in Shadow of Mordor, you can get like stabbed in the face or whatever, and obviously that's just like a game mechanic because that like you live. But like like the kill cams or whatever, or like kill animations, that like they're not something you actively like control while doing it. You just like press a button and he like does the animation. So like a kill cam animation, I think is an in-game feat that you can use.
Yeah, I agree. But like, what about? I think that story feats definitely take precedence over everything, right? Like,
of course,
the actual
like any cinematic will immediately take precedence over game
but then
feeds.
What happens when you have games that are very largely gameplay based and have little to no story, and any story cutscenes they do have obviously don't have many feats happening.
To me,
characters talking.
See, to me, characters like that are like you can't. They're just unusable, or like, or it doesn't really like. They just don't have any feats really by that point. Either that or like the feats are so fucking inconsistent and wanky that like they don't then like you can't use them anyway.
So
Dragon Ball.
What happens if, let's say, you have a game, right? I'm curious on your opinion on this. What happens when you have a game that, consistently throughout the game, the enemies get progressively stronger, right? So
Sure.
let's say at the beginning of the game, I'm gonna use Legend of Zelda for example here. Let's say at the beginning of the game you're fighting like a moblin, right? Let's like a moblin, a goblin, whatever, the same thing. Well, they're not the same thing, but I'm not gonna get into that. But like you get hit by a goblin sword and it hurts you, right?
Sure.
And then progressively the scale goes up. Like the monsters get a bit stronger. Then you start fighting bigger goblins, ogres, knights, or whatever whatever order the universe has set as its like enemy order, right?
Yeah.
And as long as what do you guys feel about if that? As long as that's consistent, that build up is consistent. Do you think in that case we can use the final enemy as a base for that character's power? As long as it's consistent. Like obviously, if one moment I'm fighting, because I'm talking about games where the enemy levels and stuff progress. So like,
what if that game gets a sequel though? Because
we're not gonna. I'll get to that.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna bring that up. But like, so like I got hurt by a moblin at the beginning of the game, but eventually I built up and fight this much stronger enemy who has like some definable feats, either be it from cutscenes or whatever. As long as like, because if what happens when the moblin is taken out of the game? Like let's say the moblin evolves, right? It becomes a much stronger. Like what used to be a moblin spawning is now one of the end game enemies spawning in that area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Like, do you think at that point we should say that? Should we use the high end at that point, or should we use the low end at that point? Because I think it's weird, because video games are so gameplay based that it's sort of odd, and I just think it's an interesting idea.
I don't really know. Like if they only have gameplay feats, then they really don't matter to me anyway.
But like my point is you have one time where a guy you get hurt by a random moblin who could probably barely destroy a rock, but like end of the game you're fighting some guy who could like cleave a mountain in half.
Sure.
So like,
but then you could go back to the starter area and still
but then you can go back to the starter area and still take damage. Like that's where I think it's weird. Obviously, if you can't go back to the starter area, then I think if you can't go back, then I think it's fair to use the final one.
To me, the idea within I think conceptually the idea of like having more health and so like therefore taking barely any damage but still damage from a moblin is that like within the canon of the universe you just like you're like a badass and you aren't getting hit by it.
That's what I think, because that's the thing that gets weird, right? Is that people will say, oh, but you can get hurt by all this, or you can get hit by all this stuff, but you could also play to the game to the point where you don't get hit by any of this stuff. So like, what do you use? I personally, for me, I think the character you should use from a purely gameplay based game is one where the game is being played the best. I think.
Sure, or like, or just like take feats from like a specific run of the game.
Yeah, yeah. You watch speedruns, and then whoever has the world record at the time, that's the character we use.
Oh shit! The world record. Oh, what if you use like the world record speedrun from like Dark Souls, and it's like he glitches up and everything.
Now he has psychic powers. Now the Dark Souls AI has psychic powers.
You still didn't really get to my sequel question.
I was getting to it. I was going to address it now. Calm yourself, Phantom.
No, calm yourself.
So are you referring to sequels in? Because again, you're right. When it gets modeled up is like when you have a one game where you're doing one thing, and then in the sequel you're back to fighting the weaker things. Now, what I think is important to keep in mind in those cases is what gear does the character have? Now, obviously, this isn't saying true for everything, but like Zelda, for example, Link gets a lot of his power from the Master Sword. That's where a lot of Link's destructive abilities come from, is from having the Master Sword, right?
Okay.
So, in Wind Waker, you end the game by stabbing the Master Sword in Ganon's head, and then, that kills him, right? Ganon's like the end-all, be-all enemy. And then Link loses the Master Sword. So I think in that case, when the sequel has him struggling against weaker enemies, it's because he doesn't have the Master Sword. So I think that's fine. I think we can still count the Master Sword feat since he did it with a sword that is meant to make him stronger.
Okay.
But in some cases, though, if they carry over the same stuff and then they're barely able to damage weaker enemies, I think that's where you just have to go by a game basis.
What I like it is like when they carry over like literally everything, but like just every mob in the game is like way harder. Like,
yeah, those are good, but not many.
I don't know if any game's ever actually done it.
Yeah, that's an
it'd
interesting
be cool.
idea. I would like to see that.
Like the starter moblins or whatever are like the final boss from the last game.
That'd be really cool. Actually, I would like that. Would be interesting, to say the least.
I've seen stuff done well. Like for example, in God of War, like you start off super fucking strong at the beginning of God of War 2 because you ended the game as a fucking god, and then Zeus takes your powers away. So that makes sense. Or then there's shit like Kingdom Hearts 2 where like you're back to fighting some like starter enemies, but in canon you got stronger gear. That's what the implication was. They literally said like, here, have some stronger clothes, which will make you stronger.
I think the way I always interpreted it in Kingdom Hearts 2 was like the fact that they were sleeping for so long made them like weak. You know,
yeah.
Like when you come out of a coma, you lose all your muscle or whatever. It probably doesn't hold up, but you know.
I mean, I could see that holding up, especially for how long they were asleep for.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, like, I think what you would want to argue there is like, how much weaker should have something made them, right? Like, you know, at one point in Kingdom Hearts 1, like, the fight ends with Ansem, and like you're fighting on like this crystal plane of like, I don't know the feats that happened in the ending of Kingdom Hearts 1, but like suddenly like you're back to the beginning and you can get like maybe like 4 hit by like a weak Heartless, and it's like, this is a little bit confusing.
Or what about the difference between Kingdom Hearts 2 and Dream Drop Distance? Because there's nothing like that happened. They should have carried over, but yeah, you're still getting. Well, no, never mind. You're fighting Dream Eaters, and that's the first time they're introduced in that game. Never mind. Don't mind me. I'm talking shit.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't comment. I haven't played any Kingdom Hearts.
If they release like a whole new bunch of enemies, then I guess you could maybe make the assumption that the enemies you're fighting are stronger. Like, just inherently, like the nobodies, right? In Kingdom Hearts 2, like, nobodies are just inherently, like, an average nobody is stronger than an average Heartless.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. But in Kingdom Hearts 2, most of the enemies you fight are Heartless.
Yeah, I know. I'm just using that as an example.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
if in a sequel, if it's kind of implied that the beginning enemy, even if the game, like, so, like you know, I'm just going to use Legend of Zelda example. This doesn't really happen in Legend of Zelda because, you know, we all know how Legend of Zelda works. Like, in a game, let's say I fight Moblins. I have 3 hearts. I fight a Moblin. I take a heart of damage, right? Mm-hmm. And then an end game enemy of that game is a knight, right? I'm just using these as an example. And then, you know, the end game enemy of that game is a knight. Sure. When I carry over to the next game, now the starting enemy is a knight, and I only have 3 hearts, but it only does 1 heart of damage. Would that be consistent? Because like the character is now strong to the point where he can fight this really easily, but we can still assume that this knight, since it was an enemy from the end game, is stronger than the beginning enemy of that game.
The fact that you have like hearts as a life bar is already like not really making sense within the confines of like reality.
You want to muddle this
using it
more?
I was using it as an example.
Muddle the shit out of it, Phantom.
Where do MMOs fit into this?
Oh no.
Oh dear.
Everyone is just like, I think everyone in an MMO is just made of like goop, and it's just like you have to like slash through them enough to like destabilize their goop formy body.
Well, like, because the enemies are fairly clearly defined, except for like, you know, the player. The thing that makes it a little difficult is that like when the player defeats them, how strong is the player, and that's when it becomes muddled.
I think. Sorry, I cut you off. You can continue.
Oh no. That's why, like, when I was arguing with you guys about Deathwing, I wasn't really arguing about what he could and couldn't do. I was just arguing about what his feats were, what he did do, and what the players had to do just to get in, right?
Well, what I think is weird in MMOs, I'm gonna use Legend of Zelda as a quick example, just to go on to my point.
Yeah.
So in Zelda, you know, end game enemies I kill in like a certain amount of hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Each boss in Zelda requires 3 cycles to beat it.
Yeah.
So even the first boss will probably take you longer to beat at the time of fighting that boss than an enemy. Just some random soldier later on in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
As long as your weapon doesn't upgrade, because if your weapon upgrades and you fight the last boss, if you could fight the boss again, then you would probably kill it faster. But that's just how the damage numbers work. But like, what's weird about MMOs is like Lich King, for example, in his expansion, like, what was he, like, level 60?
80. He was level 80.
80. Okay. So I don't know how many, like, I don't know much about WoW, so you're gonna have to correct me on anything
The
I get
current
wrong.
level is the current level cap is 110.
Okay. So let's say, Lich King story-wise, big bad, right? Like, he's super powerful, a threat to the world, right?
Right.
But he's an early expansion boss, right?
Yeah.
Like, relatively early
Yeah.
in comparison, because what happened? There was like 4 or 3 expansions after Lich King. So now, Lich King, big bad boss, threatening to the world. But obviously, as the game progresses, the monsters are gonna have to get stronger, right? You're not gonna keep fighting level like 80 mobs when you're level like 100, right?
Right.
So what happens when I find a level like 100, just like level 100 human knight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he takes longer to kill now than it would take me to kill the Lich King. Because I know you can go back to earlier raids and it's usually a lot easier, right? Because scaling down. So like, that's where I think the MMOs are kind of weird, because it's like, since everything goes up by these levels, like, is this level 100 knight really stronger than the Lich King? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I know the Lich King has story stuff, so it's kind of a bad example, but you can apply it to other bosses and raids that don't have much story relevance.
Yeah.
So I think that's what can be weird in MMOs.
I mean, like, WoW has sort of fixed it with this thing called time walking, where it's like, if you're actually doing it, if you're just walking into the raid and just doing it, you're not actually doing anything. But if you do time walking, then you're going back in time and you're actually fighting them at their real strength. So WoW's kind of fixed it, because you still need a full raid to take them out, but still, at the end of the day, like, an Eldritch God takes less time to beat than, like, a fucking boar.
Yeah.
Like, this is in other MMOs that don't have this, right? Like, WoW is just a special example that has it. And they didn't do this just for the sake of power levels. They did it because people wanted to experience this shit again.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Yeah. So, like, I'm just saying, like, MMOs that don't have this, they are not gonna have those power levels.
Yeah, it's definitely very really weird. Like in Final Fantasy, for example, like there's like one of the early bosses is like Ifrit, the summon, right? And like summons are established as like these crazy powerful monsters, right?
Yeah.
And then like I fight Ifrit at like level 15, and then like at level 30, I'm fighting like an okay sized bird, and it's like, can this okay sized bird kill Ifrit?
There is literally a move in Final Fantasy VII where Sephiroth throws a planet at you and it doesn't do anything to the planet you're on.
Yeah.
But
I remember that.
Yeah, no, he throws a meteor and like you see it destroying the whole galaxy, and yet you're still alive.
Yeah, it hits you, and then it hits you for like 2,000 damage. You're like, shit.
Yeah. What do you have? 9,000.
A slight inconvenience at best.
Like, oh, okay, Tifa, please heal us.
It's like that one I saw, like a Pokemon like fan comic once where it was like Gyarados uses like a hyper beam on like a little tiny Pikachu, and like the hyper beam just like expands out like this gigantic fucking nuclear blast, and it's just like, he just fainted.
Yes. I've seen that. That was hilarious.
He's okay. It's I promise. Or it's like, you have like Pikachu fighting like Primal Groudon as he uses Precipice Blades and like opens a fissure that like across a continent, and then it's like fainted.
Or how about Focus Sash?
And they had to just tank it. They're wearing a headband. They're like, your continent splitting powers cannot affect me.
Or like they use Earthquake and they fucking miss.
Yeah. That's yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think
MMOs are definitely kind of weird at that. So MMOs, I think, is a lot harder to define what you can use, unless the MMO's got a lot of story stuff. But like a lot of well-defined story stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man, Phantom posted the comic. You know what? You know what's great for power level debates is literally any street tier. I love I love using street tier characters because they're like so much more grounded in reality that you can't fuck them up.
Yeah.
Like you'll never like see something Spike Spiegel does and think like, well, how strong is that?
Mm-hmm.
He's just like a strong human.
I actually like book characters because most of them are fairly well defined.
Especially with book characters, because like the narration will literally like tell you everything they're doing in like very, very much detail.
Very much
detail.
In much detail.
Shut up! Don't bully me.
Sky and I have been bullying each other all night. It's your turn now,
it's
bitch.
Your
Oh,
turn.
no.
It's your turn. Hey,
DP.
Tangelo. You're 5'6", right?
No, I'm 5'10". I think
You're 5'10".
Hey,
You're like a little baby.
no. Shut up! I'm king of the manlets.
King of the manlets.
What was I even saying? Oh yeah, like there's no fictitious elements to like most street tier characters. Like, yeah.
I think even extending up to wall tier and even building tier, honestly, as long as like they stay consistently at building tier, you can make it pretty obvious what they can and can't do.
Right.
I think it's once you start extending past, like once you pretty much get like, you can. It happens pretty much after building tier, but like once you get past city and above, that's where things become really, odd.
Yeah.
You know what else is bad for in terms of consistency?
Huh.
Monster movies and slasher flicks, especially.
Oh yeah, like the fucking slasher movie villain teleport, the classic.
Oh god, yes. Predator. Oh, and I think the alien is better defined, but the Predator and fucking Godzilla and all of those monsters, all of the Toho monsters.
Godzilla, isn't each like movie a different interpretation of him though, or is it like a continuous narrative of him?
It's a continuous narrative until it gets rebooted.
Okay.
Like Shin Godzilla is not the same one as the Godzilla in I think what's the movie called? The one in 2000?
Godzilla versus the monsters?
Final Wars, I think.
Oh.
It's not the same Godzilla, and it's not the same Godzilla as the 1950s. So yeah, there are different universes, but there are continuities.
So like, how strong can Gamera get from kids cheering? If there was a composite kid of like every single kid on the entire planet, would like him cheering by himself like give him the same power up as every kid cheering?
I don't think so. That doesn't really make much sense.
I don't know. I'm fucking bullshitting. This guy's is goof.
Well, for that you would need to find out how much power he gets from one child.
Yeah,
and then
I was gonna
multiply
say
that by the children.
what you could do. The best way to keep that consistent is be like, just figure out how much he gets from one child, and then that way, when you add more children, you know how much it's going to increase by. Preferably by addition, not multiplication, because multiplication makes things really weird. Every child increases his power by 2 times, but then 2 times gets to 4 times, and then 4 times to 8 times, and then
that's just called exponential math.
Yeah,
but good at math.
You can. It will get very muddled up eventually. Okay, so addition's easier to keep track of.
Lads.
Yes.
Let's talk about One Punch Man.
What? Saitama will beat everyone.
No, he
won't.
All right. I get. Listen. The joke in One Punch Man, yes, is that he's so strong he beats literally everyone with one punch because they're all weak. But he's only that strong within the confines of like the universe he's in. He wouldn't necessarily be that strong if he was put into like DC or like Dragon Ball or whatever. You
But
know,
we can't use his best feats though, which he has some good ones.
I mean, even with his best feats, he's still not contending with even like S tier Superman level.
Yeah, I mean,
people,
but we're
you know?
yeah, but right now we're just talking consistency. So I don't think we can save the One Punch Man being stronger than other people in another cast. I think.
Like Saitama is so like we don't even know what exactly Saitama is capable of. Plus, there's like this weird misconception about him that like he has like there's like a misconception about him that he has the power to beat people in one punch, which just isn't true.
No, that's definitely not true. That's another thing though about the consistency in power levels is that, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying about like the One Piece and the Delafruits earlier, but it is very nice if the author does say exactly what it is that like Saitama is obviously just super strength, but
Yeah.
one shot abilities actually in terms of consistency, one shot abilities I just think are stupid and should not be used ever.
Or like just hacks abilities.
Well, I think some hacks are okay. Some are not that bad. Like precog, like that's not that bad as long as it's like understandable.
say-
What would
I
happen
wouldn't
if
say
someone's ability actually was to beat everyone and always win?
Well, then that's
that's a
a meme
stupid
character.
ability.
Why would you even? Well, it's like why would you even have a debate with like who would win? This guy or this guy whose power is literally to win every fight? It's like gee, I wonder.
Or how? All right. How about this? How about whose power is super luck?
There actually is a character like that in one of the One Piece movies. There's also a hero that's like that.
I'm sure there is.
But I mean, like, yeah, like to be able to beat them, you would have to overcome everything that could possibly go wrong.
So you just gotta be always lucky.
There's a Marvel character who has like the power where like his superpower is that like he gets different powers in relation to the situation he's in. So like he'll like just by default he doesn't have any powers, but if he jumps off a building, tries to kill himself, he'll like get the ability of flight and he can like fly.
Sounds pretty
Yeah.
broken.
Yeah. I mean like I don't know like I don't know exactly to what extent he can get it. Like if he's fighting like a super strong guy, I don't know if he'll get like super strength equivalent to that of like what he would need to win, or if he just like gets like super strength power and it's just like a set amount of super strength that he gets whenever he gets that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a character like that you shouldn't use either. Then
You cut out Sky.
I don't think you should use a character like that either. Like a character that has that sort of ability.
Yeah, I mean I wasn't saying we should or shouldn't use him. I just thought it was cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a cool power.
You know what we should do for a future cast?
Huh.
Pokemon power levels. Especially
boy.
in relation to each other.
I actually wanted to say on the topic of another cast, I would like to do, because it kind of piggybacks off this because we were talking about like we're in this cast we've talked about like feats consistencies.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of
Sure.
want to do the next cast where we talk about all the different categories that stuff gets put under, like speed feats, destructive feats, durability feats, and how
Let's
they're
talk
used
about
in
how
debates.
fucking shit speed feats are always all the time, and arguing them is a fucking pain in the ass, and I hate it.
Well, we can do that on a different. I think that'd be a good idea for a cast. It's just talking about all the categories and how we feel about them and all that stuff.
I want a podcast when you and I are talking shit for an hour and a half. At each
Who's
other.
you and I?
Who's you and I?
Yes.
Oh no, we don't know. All right. I think I think we've gone on long enough.
Yeah, I think
we've bored you enough. Viewer, Mr. Viewer-san, sama.
Mr. Viewer-san sama-kun.
Lord
right.
knows these baka have bored me to tears.
Baka.
Gomen nasai.
Gomen nasai.
The weed
and-
is killing me.
Everyone, oyasumi.
Oyasumi.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
All right.
All right.
That was the thing.